Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. And we're here today with special guest, Guadalupe Lepe, who's here to share with us her new book, Developing My Type, Personal Life Edition. So can understanding your personality type transform the way you communicate, build relationships, and make decisions in both your personal and professional life? Well, today's guest is here to share with us just that. Guadalupe Lepe is the CEO of HDS, the authorized distributor of the Myers-Briggs Company in Mexico and Latin America. With over 18 years of experience in personality type, she has dedicated her career to helping leaders, teams, and organizations unlock their potential through self-awareness and growth. Her book, Developing My Type, rooted in Carl Jung's theories and the Myers-Briggs framework, explores how understanding personality types can transform relationships and foster personal development. Guadalupe's expertise includes delivering workshops and feedback sessions for senior leaders and strategic teams in top organizations, combining her background in organizational and human development with international experience to inspire personal and professional success. Myers-Briggs is a registered trademark of the Myers-Briggs Foundation in the United States and other countries. So welcome to the show, Guadalupe Lepe.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marianne. I'm so pleased to be here.
Well, my goodness, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. What inspired you to write this?
Well, Marianne, it has been a good experience for me. You know, I am a fan of the self-awareness. I've been in this industry for about 20 years now, and getting to know myself and how my clients and many people ask me about how to get better to understand themselves. It was like my main point. I have been in knowing type and all about personality for a long time now. So I think it has been a very, very good resource for my life personally, and of course for my professional life.
Well, I was so impressed with your book, especially, because you draw on Carl Jung's Myers-Briggs framework. And I'd love for you to share about that for our listeners.
Yes, it's in terms of type and all the story around the Myers-Briggs type instrument, and as well Carl Jung theory. It for me has been, like so very excited information in terms of knowing myself better. In my story, in particular in professional story, with all this information, I gained a lot of understanding on how to understand my personality in the terms that Carl Jung described it. How we charge energy, how we perceive information, how we make decisions, and how we approach the world. And it may sound like, kind of simplistic, but it's so interesting to know how we manage ourselves in these four dimensions. So that's something that captivated me since I learned about it.
So knowing these different types, these personality types, what inspired you then to blend these insights for everyday personal growth?
Well, one of the things that my clients used to ask me, because a lot of information is there in terms of technical information and theory, and how was those information like got framed into technical and manuals and so. And a lot of people ask me, how do I apply this into my personal life? What could be in terms of resources, in terms of certain advices that I could do in my professional or my personal life. So that's when we started to find out like different strategies and how to approach the best way to communicate, the best way to manage emotional intelligence, and a lot of tips and even anecdotes that we gain in our experience, Marianne. So a lot of questions from people, particularly in the daily basis. It was more the main reason that I got to develop this book.
So, how can knowing our type improve our emotional intelligence and communication with others?
It's quite interesting because one of the things that I love from type is that you don't have a bad or a good type. All of us as a humans have different preferences. There are some people who prefers to communicate like directly, express their thoughts every time, or they kind of charge energy with others. And there are other people who charge energy by themselves, reflecting, reading a book, or doing something by themselves. And it's not good or bad, but we have different preferences, and that's normal. When we understand that we have our main preferences and others have theirs, and that's not in terms of something that it's bad or good, then I could understand better how to manage my relationships, because it's not bad that if I have a preference to talk and I have a person who are close to me that they are not that close, or they don't need to express themselves so loudly or so constantly. That's when I begin to get that information around how to be more empathetic with others' preference. So it's kind of my self awareness helps me to have the awareness of others, Marianne. So it's kind of flexing my preferences to understand others.
Such a profound book. And I know you share about actionable strategies within your book. Can you share an example of how someone might use their type to improve like a difficult relationship?
Well, it's interesting, Marianne, and I would like to share a personal anecdote. You know, I have my husband. He has a preference for I, so he's an introvert, and I have a preference for extroversion. So when we recently got married, when I got to my home, and he was there, and I was like, okay, let's have a talk now, like, please let me know what how was your day? What did you do? And he was like, okay, yes, but he in at the moment he could, he was like playing the piano. But just let me a minute. I need to go to my room because I need to write an email or something. And I was like, like I began to become stressed. I took it personally, and I was like kind of doubting, is he into me or not? It was kind of now at this time I find it funny, and when I understood these preferences, and later on when I revealed, that I knew the type, and how was it, and he told me, oh, now I understand why you talk that much, and I was like kind of funny. When you have those kind of reflections, then you could start more mature conversations, and you can understand how to manage your relationships. Other particularly and very important anecdote in my personal life was with my sister. She has an F preference and I have a T preference. F for feeling, and myself T for thinking, in terms of how we make decisions. So she's a person who, every time that we're going to make a decision, she always starts thinking about others, the impact about others. And I'm more like a logical, pragmatical person. So you could imagine those kind of decisions, particularly when we needed to be, in a Christmas time with family, and we were like, okay, where are we going to stay, or we're going to have Christmas? And I was always having these thoughts, so very pragmatical, like, well, last time we went to that place, or it's kind of expensive now if we go there, or the last time we spent with that person. I was kind of more logical, pragmatical, and in my case it was not bad. It's kind of my arguments in my head. And for her, the arguments that started in her thought was more like, yes, but remember that my mother needs this, or remember that the last time he didn't have, the food was not good for her stomach. So she was always thinking on things that I was not considering. And it was, at the beginning, now that I have this knowledge with me, I'm more open to understand their views, her views, and she's more open to understand mine. But you could imagine at those time, a lot of conflicts arose in terms of, oh, you're very romantic, but you are so very pragmatical, and you are missing this, and you're missing this, and a lot of conflicts started between us. So it's quite interesting, Marianne, when you understand others and how they make decisions, how they approach the world, and how they communicate. You could understand that's not personal. It's not that you are not being considered by them, or they are not really taking care of you. Is because our preference differ a little bit, and we really enrich each other when we understand each other as well. So it's quite interesting when you understand others' view.
I'm sure there are many people that want their entire family to read this book, but
Exactly.
yeah,
Yes.
what typically happens, you'll have one person that reads the book and really starts to gain some great self awareness. Can just one person in a family dynamic that maybe is challenging really help to reframe the entire family dynamics that happen?
Yes, exactly. And it's for me it's so very important, Marianne, because we are in the business of transformation, and we normally say that we transform lives. And I think these transformations begins always with self-awareness. When you see yourself, and when you understand better, then you gain a lot of insights on how it's this information, flying into the heads of other people, how I'm being seen by others, because maybe I don't have any bad idea, but other people are not seeing myself as I was supposed to. So really understanding each other's better, kind of get a different framework in my head about how I perceive them. Is so you are with this information, you kind of change your story about others, and that's very helpful in terms of building relationships.
Now, can parents use developing my type to also have better relationships with their children or help navigate parenting challenges?
Yes, exactly. We have both. We have different chapters in terms of how type could help me to get more about those. And for me was so very for me was like insight, a very important insight, because I now I have two teenagers, and for me was so interesting because I when I was writing this information, I was like kind of reflecting into myself. And it's interesting because as a mother, I have a preference, an ESTJ preference. So of course, when I am a kid, when I was a kid, I was like structure, and I was always asking for information, and I was organizing everything, and when I now as a mother, I'm kind of the same, but I'm also kind of always anticipating things. And my teenagers, they are not that way. And of course, when I was gaining all this information to structure the chapter, I was like, oh, okay. Sometimes it's not that I need my daughters to be as myself, or with this structure, they are more into the P preference, that they're more open, they are more like spontaneous. And the way that I was in my head, of course, that I was good for them to be educated, it was not the best way for them. So it was so very good for me to engage with them. I share the information about how an ESTJ mother behaves, and then I get all the information about how my INTP daughter behaves as well. And we had this fantastic conversation. It was not personal, it was not about guilty, you are guilty of this. No, we were like, oh, mommy. So you are like, yes, I need this. And I was like, oh, sorry, I now understand. Yes, I get it. Right. So at the end, we gained some agreements, and it was so very interesting to make this happen. And later on, she was like reading the book to her friends, and they were like making agreements with themselves as well. So it was a very very good experience, Marianne. So it's a very good opportunity to get yourself having these conversations with your kids.
So people can use developing my type to create really lasting change in their lives and relationships?
Yes, it's not how could I say, it's a starting point to open conversations, Maria. Because it's when in terms of building relationships, all relationships and interactions, every person in a relationship has her or his own story. The perceptions, how I see you, how I see myself, and with this information, then we make stories. We build stories in our heads, and our needs, our preference, and our personality in general means or gives us this information to manage our relationships. So when we get, for example, one thing that I do normally is when I'm going to have a conversation with a person in my family or even in my work, I normally kind of refer his or her type, my type, and I have my book like as a reference, like to prepare myself to gain more understanding about their potential needs, maybe. So I can flex my type where I can anticipate how can I communicate better, how I can manage the relationship better. So it's something that can help you to prepare um, beforehand, or if you have the how do I say, like the trust with that person, and let's just have this conversation. I'm going to read something to you, and I just want, I'm curious, if it's something that this information click about how you see the world. And most of the time when I have had these conversations with people, they most of the time they say, yes, how you know that? Right? And it's something that's starting a very good starting point for conversations and for gaining some agreements with others.
So, what would you say to someone who's skeptical about using self development tools in their personal life?
Well, what I have found, Marianne, in this industry is, and I totally understand, what I have had some conversations with skeptical people that normally say to me, I'm not going to have an instrument or a particular theory to define who I am, or this kind of information or frameworks. I don't like those because it's kind of a sticker that I get. It's something, it's very rigid. And other times it's something that the perception that some people have is about, I could change, right? So how am I going to have this level into myself if I can change? The answers that I normally give is that this is an information that you gain for yourself, particular to understand you and to check around time how you flex your type. Particularly with Carl Jung theory that I love, is that he used to say that we normally have preferences, but these preferences developed in time. And developed in time because you get to know yourself better. And of course, you gain understanding of what kind of preferences have worked for you in time. So, in terms of having these frameworks apply, or these resources used, or even diagnosis instruments or assessments apply to you, is more like a point of reference. And it's a process. I always tell to my clients that self-awareness is a process, and sometimes we need this kind of mirrors, or kind of I see this kind of framework like a photograph. Now you take a photograph, is sometimes you have a good picture, sometimes it's not that like you, because the picture was not that good, but it says something about you. And with this information, I have really seen a lot of aha moments with a lot of people, and it has been really interesting about how they gain information for their personal life, and how they really change something that was so valuable for them to get to the results in their professional or in their personal life. So I would suggest like to explore more, rather than just make an argument about frameworks or theory.
I think as people grow and develop, that's something that they really want to dive into is how can we be better at relationships? Because everything's about relationships in the long run.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah. Do you have I know we've covered so much, but do you have a success story from a reader or a client that has applied these methods and has just done phenomenal?
Yes, we have an experience with a CEO, and he used this information. He was it was the story about a skeptical person. He was like, I'm not that sure. This is kind of romantic. He was really having a lot of challenges in his industry, in his company, and he was like, I'm not sure about. And at the end, I was having the application of certain information. And later on, I was having a coaching conversation, and we started using this book. And I was like, try just to make a conversations with your team with this guy. And we were like kind of exploring. He was sharing with me some conversations that he had the chance to make. And he was like, I was so surprised. And I was like, you can share the information, you can even read the book with them, or you just can have like a conversation with some questions around what you get into the book. And at the end, Marianne, he confirmed he really had a so very successful team building conversations. They were so more engaged, and they gained into very good agreements about how they were going to have meetings. How was going to be the communication, in terms of writing, or more meetings or no meetings. They gained very good agreements about how they interact with each others, and they got so very more productive, and at the same time they gained trust within them. So it was so very successful case, Marianne.
What a great example. I mean, Guadalupe, you're such an inspiration. Where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community and learn more about your work?
Oh yes, and I would love that. Well, you can check on the book at Amazon. We're there, and of course, I run a company at humandevelopmentsolutions.com, and we're always open to clients, particularly when they want to transform their lives. I'm so pleased to gain information and to answer questions.
Well, Guadalupe, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Now, I'm so very, very happy to be with you, Marianne.
Well, thank you, Guadalupe. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Developing My Type. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.